To trade based on what you'll see in this video, because there is no guarantees of making a profit in the market. It takes you a long time to become a good trader. So this video here is just to educate you to become a much better trader. So what I want to do initially in today's training is I want to bring up a bit of a whiteboard here, or a bit of a blank screen here. I'm going to walk you through this here, and then I'm going to walk you through how it actually looks on the charts. Now, this is the advanced trading technique, no matter what market you're looking at. And I really learned this from one of my mentors, and using this technique, it helped me take the confusion out of what the market's really doing. You know, are we topping out? Are we about to go through a crash? Are we not? What's happening right now? And it really helped me just stay relaxed and calm and understanding what the market is doing. And that is always having a look at the higher time frame, no matter what you're trading. So for me personally, I love trading the daily charts. I love entering in on the daily charts. And let me see if I can change that to a different color. So I personally love trading the daily charts. The reason why is because I can get in today. So this is the daily chart. So I like to trade the daily charts because I can get in today and hold for a few days and make a really good income from that. Or I can actually hold for, a matter of a few months, or sometimes even up to 6 months or more, and really capture some really big moves. So I like trading the daily charts. But the daily charts can be quite volatile, right? There's a lot of up and down swings, and there's a lot of highs, a lot of lows, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of move. And again, following on from yesterday's video, yesterday's trend analysis. So make sure if you haven't seen that, go watch that first, because then this will make more sense if you watch that one, right? Yesterday was simple, basic, but powerful trend analysis. And now we're taking that trend analysis, but to another level. And so on the daily chart, that's what I like to trade with. But it's always important, but it's also important to make sure we keep an eye on the higher time frame. So if we're trading the daily, we've been looking at the weekly charts. This is where it starts to get really, really, really powerful. Because sometimes we can get the market where the market might have a bit of a run up, and then we might start to see something like this happen for a while. And this actually could happen for 2 or 3 or even 4 months. And we're getting a bit of a weak pullback. And then we get a bit of a run up through there, and then we might start getting something like this here, like that there, and then we go for a run. And this is what we're seeing on the daily charts. And what happens is that through this period through here, through this pullback through here, and through this pullback through here, people start to get really confused. They're like, oh my goodness, what's going on? I'm not too quite sure, and so on and so forth. So what happens is, let me just bring up a bit of a divider here. So that's what the daily chart looks like. But if we look at the weekly chart, this chart here, the weekly chart will look something like this: a run up, a pullback, a run up, a pullback, a run up. So you can see that the weekly chart is this period through here is that pullback there on the daily chart, right? So the daily charts, because it's a daily chart, we have a bit more volatility. But if we look at the weekly chart, we can see the weekly chart's just pulling back, and when now the overall weekly trend is up. So we have a weekly upward trend. So when the weekly trend is up and we get these pullbacks, we're just getting a nice pullback in a very big bull market. So as we're experiencing these pullbacks on the charts, if we have a strong weekly upward trend, then you know the big trend is up, and there's a very high probability that this here and this here is going to be short-lived, and it's just a matter of time before this trend resumes here. So that's actually the basic sort of what we're looking at there. We want to make sure we keep an eye on that higher time frame weekly trend, because in any moment, if we're going through a bit of a sideways phase or a bit of a pullback on the daily charts, but we have a strong weekly trend, there's a very high probability that we are going to start to see some really big strong moves like this, and very big strong moves like this, which goes inside of that on the weekly chart and that on the weekly charts. So anytime we have a very strong weekly trend, either up or down, then what we're looking for is it's okay, we have a very good strong trend, and any pullback we get on the daily charts as long as the weekly trend hasn't changed, this is just a nice healthy pullback in a bull market. This will take the confusion out, because if you're looking at the daily charts, you're like, oh my goodness, this thing's been going sideways for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months sometimes. It's like, oh my goodness, what's going on here? But if the pullback is just in line with a very strong weekly trend, well, the very strong weekly trend is up, and we're just going through a nice healthy pullback in the markets, and nothing has changed. We're just gone through a bit of what I call a resting phase before the market is likely to continue this weekly trend. So that's a bit of a basics on there. All it is making sure we keep an eye on the weekly trend, that higher time frame, because as the weekly is strong to the upside, any pullback we get, as long as the market's making higher lows on the weekly charts, then any pullback we get on the daily charts is just a short-term pullback. And you can see from this point here, this is one here, and this is obviously, this is the one pullback here. So first pullback here, and as you can see, we may have spent 2 to 4 weeks just pulling back here. If you're just focusing on this period here only, you'd be like, oh, I'm not too quite sure what's going on. But if you're looking at the weekly chart, you're like, oh, look at this here. We're in a very strong upward trend, and the market's just pulling back. So nothing's changed. We're just gone through a pullback. And then the market's likely to continue. So let's actually go to the actual charts itself right now, and let me show you exactly a few examples of what I mean by this, and this will really, really help you out. Alrighty, traders, so let's have a look at this here. This is actually just a real live chart as I'm actually doing the recording right now. And what we have is two different things. So the first chart to the left is the daily charts, and to the right is the weekly charts. Now, on a bit of caveat there, if you're trading, say, a 5-minute chart, well, then you might want to look at the 15-minute chart as the higher time frame. If you're trading the hourly chart, you might want to use the daily chart for the higher time frame. In my case, in my example, I love trading the daily charts. So we have the daily chart to the left, and we have the weekly chart to the right. Make sense? So let's have a look at this here. We can see, let's actually take this off the screen here. If I bring up a little arrow, and if I notice this weekly chart here, in fact, let's actually this here. Notice on this weekly chart, we've had a very strong movement, right? Especially in the last sort of, this is a weekly chart, so probably the last sort of, maybe 6 months or more. Look what's happened. We've had a move up, and then we've had a pullback. And we've actually been making higher lows all the way up. See that there? All the way up. Higher lows, higher lows, higher lows. Move up, come back down, and another higher low. So this weekly chart is what? Very strong on the upside, isn't it? So let's now revert that back to daily charts and see what I'm talking about here. So let's actually get an arrow here, and I'm going to bring up an arrow just like that. And actually, I've got a few drawings on there. Let me actually bring this up here. All right, so we can see that if I bring up, see this arrow, you can see this arrow here as I move it around. This arrow here, this is arrow here on the weekly chart. As you can see, if I bring it down to here, if I bring it down to here, like that, you can see how that it shows you it's the exact same level. This is the weekly chart to the right and the daily charts. So I'm going to put up an arrow from there, and look what happened. So the market ran up, came back down, found this low, and then rallied up. And then look what happened. It came back down, and then we found a lot of support, didn't we? Look what the weekly chart was doing. What was the weekly chart doing? The weekly chart was what? In an upward trend, right? So we had a move up, and then we had a pullback. But look what was happening here. This is where a lot of traders can get really confused, because the market comes back up, and then we have a pullback, and then we just do this little sideways sort of phase through here. Not really much going on. But that pullback is what? Just that bit there on the weekly chart. But what's the weekly chart doing? It's higher low, higher low, higher low. Oh, look, another higher low. And then the market did what? We actually broke out, and then the market went for another move to the upside. See that there? Then what happened? Then we had this, look at this big pullback through here. So we started to have this pullback all through here. See all that pullback? See, if a lot of people are just focusing on this pullback, like, oh my goodness, and they're freaking out because they're like, oh my goodness. But if you just kept an eye on that weekly chart, you'll know, hang on a minute, we're in a very big, strong upward trend. So this pullback here is what? This pullback right here is just this pullback here on the weekly chart. And as you can see, what was the weekly chart doing? Just having a nice pullback. So if you're just if you're focused on the daily chart, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm not sure what's going on. You're confused. You're worried about this thing just completely falling through the floor. And then you're like, oh my goodness, okay, well, the weekly chart's still up. Well, there's a good probability where that's just a nice healthy pullback before we continue up again. And then as you can see that if I bring this up here, you can see how this point through here is just this point through here. And I actually own this stock for this actually one reason. I bought this stock actually down here, right? And so you can see how that since we've actually made this very big upward move, we've just continued, and now look what's happened, right? We actually went through this would be the sideways phase pullback. That was the sideways phase pullback. And then guess what happened? We broke out and then we went for a nice move up. And then that was that move up there. And then we came down. Now we broke out. Now we went for another move up. And now we're going for another move up. Now it doesn't mean that the weekly chart's going to stay like this, right? But in any moment, in any time you have a very big strong upward trend and you're starting to get these pullbacks in the markets like this here, you got to ask yourself, okay then, is this where the market's completely changed? Or is this pullback in a very big strong bull market? And if that's the case, then the market is in a very strong upward trend. And this will help you take the confusion out and keep you relaxed. Because as this market's pulling back here, like it was here, you're like, okay, well, this is just the way the markets work. We're just getting a very nice, healthy pullback in the markets. And that's what's happening through there. So that's actually one stock. Let me bring up another stock here so I can really drive it home. All right, so let's have a look at this here. This is just another stock that was really focusing on and really keeping an eye on for. And let me just bring this back to this point here. And I really want to bring this point back to here to really demonstrate what I'm talking about here. So as you can see, what do we have here? This is the weekly chart to the right, and remember the daily chart to the left. Now, if I just focus on the daily chart for a minute, notice how we had we had a strong move up through there. And then we actually spent, look at this here, we actually spent over a month going sideways. And then we rallied up, and this is the daily chart, remember? So we actually had 1, 2, 3. This here was almost 4 months. And then the market went for a run. So if you were in this particular market, or you're watching this market, and this market did nothing for 4 months, you're like, oh my goodness, this market's not doing nothing. I'm confused. And you're now getting frustrated or flustered, or you're just not sure what's going on. Then what do you do, right? Remember, this is the daily chart. Remember, that's the reason why we need to always keep an eye on the weekly chart or the higher time frame to say, okay, what's really going on here? And so if I look at this here, if I take everything up the screen again, if I bring this arrow, so this very first arrow right here, as you can see, is this arrow right here on the weekly chart. Now, what was the weekly chart doing when it comes to simple trend analysis? It was going up, right? We had a move up, and then we just had a pullback. So this here was just this bit right here on the weekly charts. So as you can see, we're just pulling back, and as we started to break out again, we just went for another move up. And then it did this move up through here. So, and then if I now bring up another arrow, and I put this arrow right there, as you can see, that arrow right there was just this arrow right here. Now, look at this. If you were just focusing on the daily charts, notice how that the daily charts were just going sideways through here, right? So not really much going on. But what was happening on the weekly charts? We ran up, made this low, which was this point right here. Then we ran up again, and then we just went sideways, didn't we? Went sideways, but what was happening? We had a low, higher low, and look what was happening here, right? We still could be doing what? Making another higher low. And that's exactly what happened. Notice how we do it sideways. Then we started to break out, which gives us a bit of confirmation that we're now likely to start to see some upward movement. It broke out, and then it just continued doing what? Making these higher lows and higher lows all the way up. So I hope you can see this. You may have to watch this a few times to really sink it in. The whole analysis is that on the weekly chart, it takes a lot of the noise out because it's not a lot of bars. And on the weekly chart, we look something like this, very smooth upward trend, just like we have here. But these periods through here on the daily charts, they can look something like you may have a move up, and then the daily chart could look something like this. And because it's much more volatile, you're like, oh, I'm not too quite sure. But if you're just looking to take the confusion out of the markets, and this is this amazing pattern, because it just helps you take the confusion out where you're just like, okay, yeah, we're getting a pullback through here like this, or we may get a run up and then a pullback like that in the markets. But hang on a minute, no, this overall trend is to the upside, and there's a real good probability this weekly chart's going to kick back in again, and now we're moving up. Now, obviously there is trend changing, right? So we're in a very big bull market in this example, very big bull market in this example. Weekly chart to the right, daily chart to the left, as you can see. And there are times where obviously where the market doesn't continue up, and that's where you need to always keep an eye, always be flexible. But in the moment when you're looking at a market and the market is pulling back against you, in this case, this is a bullish example. All right, this is a bullish case example. Then what you would do is that if the market is doing that, then you know that there's a real good probability that any pullback, just like here on the daily chart, is probably likely to be then bought back in by the big guys and continued with that big weekly trend. Now let me show you an example of the bearish side and what that looks like. Alrighty, so then we're now looking at the flip side of, geez, I went high just then, didn't I? We were now looking at the flip side of the markets, right? So we're looking at, remember, the daily chart to the left, daily chart to the left, weekly chart to the right. And now what do we have on the daily charts? We have a trend down, move up, and then rallied up, made a lower high, rallied down, rallied up, made a lower high, and then we broke down. You see that through there? So that's what the weekly chart was doing. But now let's go, this is arrow number 1, this is arrow number 2, and I'll mark it on there. This is arrow number 1, and this is arrow number 2, so you can see the different ones. But notice what was happening through here as we're focusing on this. So we had a big move down and we had a little rally up. This was the big move down, and then we had some sort of a rally up through here for a couple of weeks, probably even, actually, what was that? That was over a month of a short-term rally. But as this market was rallying through here, as this market was rallying, you would be very, very, very alert, because where is the trend on the weekly chart? It's down, isn't it? And you're like, oh, I don't know about this. I don't know about going long here, because this is very strong weekly trend. And even though the market's having a bit of a pullback, because it is just a pullback in this very big, strong downward trend, there might be a chance that the weekly chart's going to come back in again and we're going to continue this downward move. And that's exactly what happened, right? We actually can see we had a big move down. So this drop down through here was what? That was that point right through there. And then guess what happened? We actually did what? Let's actually see if I can draw a different arrow, a different color now. Let's actually go, let's actually go green here. So then we did what? And then we had a rally, and this rally here was a very, see, it was actually pretty strong rally on this daily charts. So we had, and that was 1, 2, 3, almost 4 months of bit of a double bottom and then a rally to the upside. But what was happening on the weekly charts? That was that rally there was what? That rally there. Now notice what are we doing? We had a move down, we had a lower high, bring it down, and then we had another rally here. So as you can see, we had another rally here. And then if you were looking at the market around this period through here to try to go long, you'd be like, we're actually still in a downward trend, and there might be a good chance that this weekly chart's going to roll back over again, and then we're going to start to head south. And guess what? That's exactly what happened. And as you can see, the market rolled over, and then we headed south, because what are we doing? We're making a high, lower high, and a lower high. So we're still in a downward trend, aren't we? And then look what happened. That point through there, then we had the drop coming back down through there. And this was also that high, which is number 1 arrow, that high there, which is number 2 arrow. So as you can see, that if you're looking to buy and hold something, but you're not sure what to do, always keep an eye on that weekly chart, because the weekly chart is king. And until this weekly chart starts to really turn around and start to give us some movement, especially on the weekly charts, then buy and hold may not be a good strategy, because if you're trying to buy all through here, and then the market drops, and then the market starts to pick back up, and you try to buy it through here, and then the market drops, and you're wondering, why does this always happen? I'm buying it as the market's going up, but then the market rolls over again. Well, look at the weekly chart, and the weekly chart's, hang on a minute, we're in a downward trend, and until this weekly trend changes, then it's like you fighting a stream, right? The stream is the weekly chart, and you got all the stream running down like that. And guess what you're doing? This is all the stream through here. This is this big stream. All the stream, the stream's running down. This is the momentum, right? And then guess what? And then you're trying to jump in and try to swim against the stream. So you're in here and you're like, oh, let me actually try to swim up the stream. How long is that going to take before you get tired? And then bam. And then you get a little bit tired, and then you get washed away with the stream, right? The stream will definitely take you. So figure out where the stream is overall. And then what you want to do is you want to try to, not fight against that, but go with it. So for me personally, whenever I'm shorting the market, I love seeing this stuff. right? Because we get a move up. And then I'm just saying, you know what, I'm going to move up. Well, it's a matter of time before this market rolls over again. Or like in the first few examples, the bullish move where the market's already, where the trend is already on a very strong upward phase, and we're in a very big strong upward trend, and then we start to get some of this. Some of us remember said before, like the pullbacks. I know it's just a matter of time before we start to jump in and go for another move up. If you're looking for a probability, that is, or if you're looking to buy and hold some stocks, or even just the market, keep an eye on that weekly chart. And if you are getting into positions and you're getting stopped out really, really quickly, then this actually could be one of the biggest keys for you, because the stream, when the stream is strong in one direction, you don't ever want to fight that.